Well, hello, David. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
It's great to see you. Happy Monday. I thought maybe we could just start if you want to just let everyone know who you are and a little bit about you and your life and what you do, and then we can kind of get into the getting things done aspect of your life.
Sure, sure. Okay, so David Drake. I'm a professor of microbiology and infectious diseases. I'm in the Iowa Institute for Oral Health Research in the College of Dentistry at the University of Iowa. I have been, my research focuses on the development of the oral microbiome in very young children. So that's why I'm in the College of Dentistry. I'm not a dentist. And so I've been a professor for 35 years now. And announced my retirement in 3 years. And so my career is going to be changing, going toward the ending phase. And so my life is going to be different. And so I have 3 adult children. I've been married for 45 years.
Oh.
And we have 4 grandchildren. And so everything keeps me on my toes.
So I would love to hear. I kind of know the story, but I'd love for our audience to hear because your GTD history, David, and kind of what got you into it in the first place, and really how, because you just been doing this, practicing this for a long time, how that has kind of really almost followed you in your career.
Yes, yeah. It has been even for me, I think it's an interesting story. So it all started when I transitioned from a postdoctoral researcher position into my junior faculty as an assistant professor. And when you're a postdoc, you're a 100% research. You've got a lot of things to do, but they're being directed by a mentor, the professor of the laboratory. And so, I would normally just keep a list of things I needed to do on a paper pad. Remember, when I was in graduate school, there was no such thing as the internet, email, computers. And so they were just coming on board, so to speak. But when I transitioned to becoming an assistant professor, I had so many more new responsibilities. It was always described to me as the tripartite mission of a professor: research, teaching, and service. And in each one of those arenas, there was just so many things coming at me: developing new courses, teaching, spending time with graduate students, mentoring graduate students. And then I was under a lot of pressure as a junior faculty member to get federal funding, NIH funding, to support my laboratory. And so I had to spend huge amounts of time, writing NIH grants, which takes 6 to 8 months to just write one. And so I was finding out that my old way of keeping track of things wasn't working real well. I mean, it was just overwhelming. And I'm like, well, how do I manage all that? That was the story I'd ask myself: how do I manage all this? And I remember I was in I think it was a Barnes and Noble bookstore. And I was actually looking through the aisle on, leadership, productivity, all that kind of things. And I saw this book by David Allen. I pulled it off the shelf and it said, "Getting Things Done," stress-free productivity. It was just like it was talking to me.
Mm.
And so I kind of, leafed through it a little bit, and I thought, oh, this sounds really cool. And so I bought it and I read it, and
And what year was that, David? How long ago was that?
I was around 2000, maybe 2000.
Slightly later, because it was published in 2001, so it would have been right
Yeah, I
around.
mean, right when it came out, because there was
Yeah,
a lot of copies, and they were all new, and
yeah.
and I thought, well, this is a totally different approach from everything I've ever heard. And I like the idea that you're gonna, it wasn't called capture back then, but the idea that you had to, everything coming at you, you had to capture and figure out what it was. What are you going to do about it? Is it something that is actionable? And then how you track that. Is it going to take more than one step? Is it going to be multiple steps? This is a pretty big thing. So it's a project, and how to track all of that. and then reviewing every week where you are, like everything you've got on your plate in your system, what's all about. And I thought that helped me stay afloat. It made so much sense. And then of course, email really started to build up.
Yeah.
Back even in the early days. And so now I had another whole thing of things to deal with. So that was the history behind it.
So you are really, for the most part, very self-taught. So you obviously you read the book. Like what was kind of after that? So you read the book, which means your intellect was like ding, 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 ding. I like this. So kind of then what happened? How did you get your system set up? Like, obviously it was some years ago, but I'd love to kind of hear that story.
Well, I found some public GTD forums. Right. And then I would see, other people would be discussing their GTD setups and how to do things or whatever. And so I learned a lot in posting on the forums and discussing with people all over the world about GTD practices and so forth. It kind of intrigued me how different everybody was in the way they did their systems. So that's, it was still self-taught, but it was coming also from other people. Yeah. And that helped a lot in discussing things.
Yeah.
I didn't find hardly any other faculty that were doing this. I found a couple, but not very many. But because, some of the things that we do is perhaps unique. Yeah. All right, in terms of how things that come at us versus what might somebody in business world might encounter. But really, the underlying thing is we're all dealing with the same level of overwhelm.
Yeah.
The amount of stuff coming in, and how do we handle this?
Yeah.
And so mostly self-taught, and then by discussion.
And the evolution of your practice really was, your participation in the forums and kind of your own kind of self-study. So I have to ask like the big elephant in the room question, right? Which is like, why after what, like 22 years, when you obviously are, hook, line and sinker into this, did you consider doing one-on-one coaching?
I realized, it's a great question. But I realized, as well as I thought GTD figured out in my system, and was working reasonably well with me, I still had this nagging feeling that something was missing. And what I found is that for so many years, I was focused on like the runway, the action levels, and the projects, and that's about it. All right. I knew I had areas of focus or whatever, but I did not spend a lot of time thinking about them or whatever. It was all directed at the runway level. I never, one of the phrases that David Allen has used fairly recent in a video was, I never climbed up the fire tower. I realized it was there, but I was too busy making sure my system was squeaky clean and all of that. And I never spent time thinking about the more big picture about why I'm doing all of this in the first place. So that's why, and I needed somebody to help guide me through a lot of that. Because now I have found that I seem to operate pretty much out of, and I have for years apparently, and I didn't realize it, which is what caused a lot of friction, is that I like to operate out of the areas of focus level. Right? Because I have all these different hats to wear. And sometimes I think, okay, I need to spend some time on this particular area. And so that's been exceedingly helpful.
I kind of want to just make a side note here, just so our audience knows that you're doing the strategy program. You're kind of past foundation into strategy, where we've really gotten into your areas of focus. And I would say the nuance of it, in my experience with you coaching you, it's so deep. There's all this depth and nuance into it, in it. And also, but we're still kind of tweaking the runway, right? We're still kind of, one of the things I just appreciate so much about working with you is we're kind of thought partners in this. And there's just this opportunity to go deep and wide, and also just tweak and fine tune. Like we've been having conversations after conversations about contexts and what works and what doesn't. And, and also once again, I think, there's so much depth and nuance nuance into getting things done. You have the model, right? You have the 5 steps and you have the 5 horizons of focus. And then there's all the subtext and the nuance in it. And that's been such a privilege to work with you and kind of getting like into the nooks and crannies of it all.
Yeah, it has. It has been a lot of fun. You know, because
What,
if you've noticed about me, I have a great tendency to overthink things, and I will
in a
fixate.
very good way.
Yeah, but I will fixate on things, and that's part and parcel of me being a professor and a scientist. I really focus in and like, okay, let me see if I can dismantle this and see if I can figure it out. You know, some engineering threads in there too.
Yeah. Well, it's so great because you also love it. You love the kind of, you know, getting in there, thinking about it. You know, one of the things that, you know, that you and I have really kind of met in the center of gravity around is the letter of the law versus spirit of the law aspect of GTD. So I just kind of would love to hear, like, you know, today what your thoughts are about that, because I think it'll be interesting for people to hear.
It is. It is. You know, so early on in the forums, I would realize that I like to do things a little bit differently than exactly what was laid out in the book. And I ran into, not everybody, of course, but there was always a fraction of people within the forums that would absolutely say, well, if you're doing it that way, you're not doing GTD. You know, and I'm like, what? You know, in other words, you have to follow exactly what David has spelled out. You know, you can't, you know, if you deviate and do way over here, then you're not really doing GTD.
Yeah.
And I never really understood that. And I'm like, well, that's not true. But we would debate and so forth. But some people were pretty well like, nope, that's it. You're not, you know. And so what I've found is, first of all, there is no such thing as GTD police. You know?
Well, sometimes it's internal, but yeah, there's not an external.
No, nobody's gonna, you know, if I decide to do something a little bit differently, I'm not gonna get, you know, a knock on my office door with a GTD badge and saying, oh, you know, you're not. And so I realized that, and it just took so long for me to understand that this is best practices and principles. You know, yeah, there are some things that, you know, you should do, but you need to take this and make it your own.
Yeah.
Because the way we operate, you know, that's why we did, you know, the Kairos assessment. The way we see things and operate is different for every single person. Yeah. And you know, for me, I realized it was a breath of fresh air. It's okay if I do things this way.
Yeah, it's like whatever works is the thing that works. And, you know, trying to getting things done in a way that we interpret someone else is doing, you know, it can really clip our wings. And yeah, factoring in cognitive preferences and all of that, you know, I think, you know, one of my, you know, I'm just so adamant about this permission slip, right? To like be curious about what's going to serve you, because everyone has, I don't know how many people do getting things done, much less like they do exercise for the sake of it, right? It's for the result, right? It's like, what's my desired outcome? What is it that I want to shift? And whatever is going to help me get there is what matters most.
Right. No, that's it in a nutshell. And the nice thing is now I'm a member of GTD Connect, and the forums, it has completely over the years changed around. Now, you know, you say you want to do it this way and you get wonderful responses. Basically, if that works for you, fabulous, you know, go.
It's like we can finally exhale, right? It's like you and I have both been around for that, like kind of rule, sort of like, you know, kind of rules of the road versus now just a little, we can relax around all of that. And it just makes it more fun. We can add a little more curiosity and levity into it. And I want to just also talk about just briefly, or actually however much you want, about how you sometimes covertly and sometimes overtly mentor your staff, because I think you're witnessing in them what you had 20 years ago, which is, oh my God, now I'm going from this to this, no instruction manual, like, and I think you've really taken that mentorship role, and not so much formally as a Getting Things Done coach, but I would just love for me and our audience to hear more about that and how you do that more subtly and more, overtly.
Yeah. At this stage of my career, the primary hat that I love to wear is the mentoring hat.
Yeah.
And I am a co-principal investigator of a large NIH funded training program. I'm on another NIH training program, and I mentor junior faculty in my college, at the university, across the university, and importantly, nationally. So I mentor 15, 20 plus junior faculty. And I'm a trained NIH grant writing coach. So I that's one aspect of it. I help them in their writing and whatever.
Yeah.
But more importantly is that I mentor the person, and the across the board, a junior faculty member, when I first come on and I look at them and I can say, I'm like, okay, what's wrong? What's going on? And then it all blends, it all comes out until I'm just absolutely overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
I've particularly junior faculty, I've got two little kids.
Yeah.
I've got all of these things, the pressure on me at work to succeed, to publish papers, to get NIH grants, to do all this. I've got 6 years, a 6-year time clock to get tenure.
Wow.
And the pressure is immense. And it, and I'm there to help them and to walk them through. It's like, okay, first of all, you got to breathe, and you can't do everything at once.
Mm-hmm.
So I guide them through a lot of the principles of getting things done. All right. Without teaching them that, because I'm not a certified teacher, but I think it has an impact. I've gotten a lot of wonderful responses from junior faculty that are now thriving better than they were before. They still have issues at times. Who doesn't? But I think that has been wonderful. One of the things that I do is I had one junior faculty member. I'm not going to mention names, of course, and I'll just make up a name. And she came on video, and I said, how is Dr. Smith today? All right. And she's like, oh, this, that, whatever. I said, now I've got a much more important question to ask. How is Angie today?
Mm. Wow.
And that difference made everything. I mean, she just stood there. Sat there for a while and just stared at me. And she opened up, and then I realized there was a lot more under the surface than what the professor was telling me. And so those are the kinds of things that we need to do for each other. And this is the stage I'm at in my career, and this is what I love doing, and I will do this as long as I'm able to, even when I'm a professor.
And it's modeling. You're modeling how you can do things without overwhelm. Like you can manage things, with a little set of tools, generating control and perspective. And I just want to acknowledge you for that, because I'm sure you're changing, parts of your organization without even realizing it.
That would be nice. Yes. But yeah, that whole control perspective thing, coming back to that question you asked before, for so many years in GTD, I was just stuck almost all the time in the control part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like that for a lot of people. You kind of, it's there, but like, how do I connect, because it's,
right.
When I already have this other practice over here. So I acknowledge you for getting there.
Yeah. It's been a big step, that it's really okay to go out into that perspective water.
Well, you need to, right? Really, that's how, then all of a sudden the code, your list sort of become top down. You have a different lens through which you're prioritizing things. But it was my practice too. I had 2 years at least. I was like very much like just trying to get my inboxes into some semblance of order. Is there anything else that you have inspired to share, about your practice or anything?
Well, I think one of the things I would tell people is, don't ever remain static. I mean, if everything's working for you, great. But remember, as you go through your career, things are going to change. As you go through your life, things are going to change. You know, for the young, I deal with young faculty who have aging parents. All right. And they have that big area of focus right there that sometimes is huge. All right. And they have young kids at the same time, that classical sandwich generation. And so, but your life changes. I don't have little kid issues anymore. I mean, I've got
grandchildren.
I got grandchildren, but being a grandfather is great because you can have fun with them and play with them and then give them back. You know, so but I think what my advice to people is it is okay to evolve. It is okay to evolve in your practice and really spend some time with yourself at the perspective level to look at things in your life. And I'm doing a lot of that right now on the areas of focus where I'm looking at how much time, how much effort, percent allocation I'm giving to each area. It's turning out to be an eye-opener. And I'm still going through that. All right. Do that. Do those kinds of things because as you just said, you know, when you spend time in the higher levels in the perspective, that's what drives everything else,
you
know, below it. And then some of this stuff coming in at you, you'll look at them like, no, it's okay for me to say no. You know, I'm still learning that. And it's okay to say no.
But you have more data from which your no is based upon.
Right.
It's not just in the moment reactionary.
Yeah.
Well, that's lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending your time with me and with us and our wonderful community of practice. And yeah, thank you so much.